Welcome to the Practice Profit System podcast. Do you own a cash-based practice? Are you looking to start one? Tired of working endless hours and still not making enough money? Want to fire your insurance company? Then you're going to love our podcast. Each episode is full of insights and proven strategies to grow your practice to 7 figures and more, allowing you to take more time off, make more money, and no longer have to take insurance reimbursements. Plus, get a free copy of my book, The Anatomy of a 7-Figure Medical Practice, where I detail my entire journey to creating my own 7-figure practice. Just go to www.srpmedicalmarketing.com/book. You just pay $7.95 in shipping and handling, and you'll also get over $1,197 in free bonuses. That's www.srpmedicalmarketing.com/book. Now, on to our show. Hey everybody, it is Matt Galogly with the Practice Profit System, and we're going to do a little bit different podcast today. It is a rainy Saturday here in the Queen City of Charlotte. I've got some college football on the TV, and I am making one of my favorite dishes, and that is pasta bolognese. Now, the reason you might be wondering, why in the hell is Matt going to be videotaping and recording a podcast about making pasta bolognese? Because how you make pasta bolognese relates to how good your business does. Let me explain. So I'm not Italian, born an Irish Catholic in Chicago. You know, the old joke of one of the smallest Hall of Fames in the world is famous Irish chefs, but I have a real passion. I love to cook, okay? And I especially love rainy, drizzly days like this in the fall and the winter, and that I get to cook. And so I'm going to make one of my favorite dishes for my family, and that's the pasta bolognese. Now, I was not raised Italian. I don't have any Italian ancestry. I don't have an Italian grandmother that taught me how to make this. But what I did have was I had a really good friend of mine. When I was in the private club business, he was one of my chefs, and he taught me the fundamentals of cooking. While we were busy expediting food, he was teaching me the fundamentals of cooking. And, you know, the interesting thing is that what I'm going to share with you, I'm going to show you how this relates to your practice and how your lack of success that you may be experiencing in your practice. So the first thing that you always need when you're making a recipe or when you're making a dish is you need a recipe. Now, this is on my iPad. It's actually one of my favorite. It's Marcella Hazan's Bolognese sauce. You can get it in the New York Times or Cooking. But more importantly is the whole key, the first time you make something, is you follow the recipe exactly as it says, okay? You don't make any deviations. You don't do anything differently. You just make it as it says, okay? I had to turn the heat down there a little bit. And if you're just listening to this, go watch this on YouTube, okay? You'll love this video and just everything that we're doing. And I'm going to break away throughout the day, and I'm going to have them all splice this together so you can kind of see how this goes, okay? So the first thing is that you need a recipe. Now, the problem is that most of you, when it comes to growing your practice, you don't have a recipe. What you do is you go to the grocery store and you want to make spaghetti, and what you do is you buy a bottle of ragu, okay? That's like finding your lead gen guy or gal on Facebook telling you how great Facebook ads are going to be. Now, I'm not against Facebook. You all know that if you're a longtime listener to this podcast. You know that Facebook can be great. In fact, I have a number of clients that they generate a lot of leads via Facebook, but it's all the other parts that come behind that. So then let's say you want to add a little bit of oomph to your spaghetti that you're going to be making for the family on a Wednesday night because time is tight, and you get some ground beef, right? And, you know, quite frankly, ground beef is okay, but what really makes pasta bolognese really bump is, you'll see here, we haven't opened it up yet, but I've got grass-fed beef and I have hormone-free pork, okay? So, you know, the pork is going to add a lot more flavor to that, okay? And over time, that's going to just, over the day of its simmering, it's going to release those flavors. So there's a big, big difference. Most of you are trying to run your business and grow your business by shortcutting it by just going to get some ragu and some cheap spaghetti, maybe throw a little meat in there, get some cheap little Parmesan. Here you go, kids, this is ready. And what I'm going to show you is how just with about 4 hours, you can actually make something pretty impressive, and how this relates back to what we do. First, because you have all my ingredients here. So I've already pre-cut my celery, my onions, my garlic, my carrots, all of that. I didn't want to do that chopping in front of you because I probably would have chopped a finger off. Very, very sharp knives. So what you have to do is when you make anything, you have to start with the base, right? So what you do is you put some oil and butter and chopped onion into the pot, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to turn the heat on a medium. We're going to cook and stir the onion. Now, a lot of mistakes, you know, when you make a recipe, if you skip steps, dish is not going to turn out as great. And so It's really important that you start with just the onions, right? And you get them translucent, and then you add in your carrots and your celery, so that way you're going to get the release of all that aroma before you start to go do all these other things. So I'm going to pause right here. I'm going to start to do some cooking, and then I'm going to come back. But I want you to really, this is the big takeaway I want you to have. You need to have a recipe. You need to have a proven recipe by somebody that has cooked it 1,000 times, okay? This is one of the most famous Bolognese recipes on the internet. Marcella has since passed away. But the thing, what you really need to understand is then you follow the recipe of that expert to a T. You don't debate it. You just go and you do it. And this is one of the reasons why maybe your practice hasn't had the success, is that it's okay to ask the questions to understand, but you just have to follow the system, okay? So after you master the system, then you can add your own little nuances to it, which I'm going to show you as we go along. So I'm going to take a quick break here. We're going to come back in a little bit, and I'm going to show you how we're doing, and then we're going to go to that next phase. But start with a recipe that's created by somebody that has done it 1,000 times, and follow that recipe to a T. We'll see you in a second. Okay, now we're going to go to this next phase. Now, what we just did is I just took the onions, the garlic, the celery, and the carrots, used some vegetable oil and some butter, and mixed it all up and cooked it. Okay, now, this is the foundation of the Bolognese. The equivalent of this in your business, in our stairway system, is what we call the beachhead offer. Okay, this is the one message, one market, one offer part of the beachhead. The problem is that when you go to start your business, you're trying to do too many things, right? And this is the Trinity, right? This is what we call the Holy Trinity. Sometimes you can throw peppers in there. And this is what really makes the base of this work. If you don't have one message, one market, one offer in your business, this is like trying to make bolognese with just starting with this raw meat, okay? This is why I'm showing you how to make bolognese and how it connects to what we do with regards to your business. This is it right here. Most of you are missing this. You're missing the Holy Trinity. You're going to wind up with ragu. You're going to wind up with crappy bolognese. Now, here's the other part. This is 2-to-1 beef, 2 parts beef, 1 part pork. Okay, why am I telling you that? Because this is the part of what we call educate and excite. This is step 2. Okay, this is where we create the know, like, and trust. Putting this all in, and I'm going to put this over here onto the burner. This is the whole component. This is like what I'm just showing you is I'm showing you the first 2 parts. These are easy, but they take a little bit of time to get right. And you just got to take your time in this. And then what I'm going to show you as we start to add the tomatoes and all of that, it's really about that conversion and creating that incredible, insatiable desire for your product and your services. Okay. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to go back and watch a little bit of this college football game. For those of you that are wondering, yes, it's Alabama and Texas. So now you know what day it is that I'm doing this. My Tigers have an easy game today. They play Southern. They should win very, very easily. But when we come back, I'm going to show you some of the next key components to doing this and what makes this dish really, really rock. Remember, find somebody that has done it before you and done it 1,000 times. Follow their recipe to a T and do not skip a step. All right, we'll be back in just a little bit. Okay, so you remember how I told you that when you want to learn how to make something, what you do is you find a recipe by somebody that has done it 1,000 times, and you follow the recipe exactly as they say, but you don't make any changes, okay? You don't question the recipe. Now, I've actually made a bunch of different recipes for pasta bolognese. I love pasta bolognese. It is one of my guilty pleasures, along with cooking out on the grill. Since it's raining today and I wasn't going to be smoking any ribs, I figured I'd show you how to make bolognese. But here's what's interesting about this in this recipe. Now, so when I go out and I look at the recipe and I look at all the reviews and everybody's talking about how amazing this is, so that's how I decide that I'm going to go ahead and use this recipe when I first started learning how to make bolognese about 4 or 5 years ago. And here's the interesting thing. Turn this down. The interesting thing is it asks for milk. Now, I don't have any other pasta bolognese recipes that say put milk in it. Now, when I first did this, I go, why the hell would I want to put milk? And it says to put a cup of milk in it and to let it simmer, all right? So here's what's interesting about this. They ask for whole milk, not skim milk. Not 2% milk, milk. Now, to this day, I have no idea why in the heck I put milk in it. I just do it because that's what the recipe calls for. Because you don't question the recipe from somebody that knows how to make great bolognese or a great dish. Follow the dish exactly as they say. All right, so I'm going to let that simmer down and we'll come back in a little bit and we'll talk more about making pasta bolognese relates to growing your practice. All right, we're getting to the end here. Now, here's what's really interesting about making pasta bolognese. The real magic happens over the next 3 to 4 hours, okay? And here's how this relates to the growing of your medical practice. Most of you, when you start your marketing and when you start your practice, you become incredibly impatient. And I'm here to tell you that it takes a little bit of time for your leads to kind of germinate and for them to become real. All right. Now, right now, what's happening with the pasta, and I'm going to stop this right here. What's happening with the pasta, or the pasta bolognese, I should say, is that we added some red wine, okay, little Chianti, right, to it. I boil that down, simmer that down. I take a sip of some red wine because why not? And now what we're going to do is we're going to add the tomatoes back in. Now, these are my favorite tomatoes to use. So I'm going to go ahead and add some tomatoes in so I can coat everything, okay? Now, I'm making a bit of a double recipe here. So the normal recipe that I'll share with you asks for one of those. I put 2 in because I'm making a double recipe, okay? Now, you stir this around and you coat it, okay? And then what's going to happen is that I'm going to let this simmer over the next 3 to 4 hours. This is like starting your marketing campaign and letting it run. We have a saying in our business, and when I'm coaching people, is don't F with it. Stop effing with it. People don't have a whole lot of patience. They think, well, I should run ads and I should get customers tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. It does sometimes, don't get me wrong. I've certainly had those environments, but the reality is that every market is a little bit different and it takes a little bit of time. So really what we've done so far is we've done the first 3 steps of the stairway. We started with the foundation, the beachhead. We added in the meat, which was the step 2, which is where we kind of educate and excite, know, like, trust. The next phase is where we convert, and that's what requires a lot of trust. I have no idea why we put milk in. I know why we put wine in, because it creates a deeper, richer flavor, right? And then what we do is we just let that bugger just simmer. And it's going to simmer for like the next 3 or 4 hours. In fact, we always joke that the pasta bolognese, I should make it the day before we eat it because it's infinitely better on the next day. It requires a lot of patience. Now, in the top 2 levels of the pyramid, or the stairway, I should say, the next level is what we call monthly recurring revenue. Big mistake that a lot of you make is you want to go right to the monthly recurring revenue. It's very hard to scale up a business. This right here is, remember how I said you follow the recipe and then you do exactly what it says? I'm actually going to diverge from this right now. I'm going to explain why. So over the time, and I've made this recipe for about 4 years, I made it the first time, and then based on my insight and knowledge of just understanding food, I started making some different changes to it. And one of the changes I made that had one of the biggest, most profound impacts is I actually started to add beef bouillon to the sauce while it's in the simmer stage. And the reason why I do that is because it creates a richness of flavor. Now, you'll notice, by the way, I didn't start at the beginning with adding the beef bouillon, meaning I didn't make it in the first recipe. It took me a couple of times making this to understand there was something that was missing and to add a richness to it. But I made the recipe over and over and over again. It wasn't after I had done it for like 5 or 6 times that I started adding my own little nuances to it. And I've probably made this dish, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 times at least. And so now there are some unique things that I add to it, but this is just going to sit here and it's literally going to simmer uncovered all afternoon while I watch some football. Okay. And what's going to happen is we're going to have this really rich, deep taste. Now, the other thing is I've only added a pinch of salt and a pinch of pepper to this thing because I don't want to over salt it right now. So I don't want it to have too much flavor and if I lose it. So it's the same thing of like, you've got to take your time in this with making a great bolognese. And that's the same thing that you're doing with building your practice. It's going to take you a little bit of time. You hear all the success stories of my clients, right? Trevor going from 30,000 to 200 plus thousand. Tracy and Mark Hawas and Nicole Garcia and just on and on and on. You hear all the success stories, but understand there was a little bit of a gap there where we were just letting things simmer. Then once we kind of figured a few things out, we added a little pinch of salt, we added our own little few ingredients, and that just ignited it. Okay, so I'm going to let this simmer for a couple of hours. I'm going to go watch some college football, and when I come back, I'm going to show you how this turned out. In fact, I'll get my son to do a little taste testing live on camera. So there you go. See you in a couple hours. All right, here I am. We are right at about, I don't know, let's see, it's been simmering about 2.5 hours, about 3 hours actually. To show you this real quickly, I think I can show you this. Hopefully you can see how this turned out. Okay, so we got a good color. Now, here's the deal about this, okay? There is a reason why I took the time to shoot this for you and take a shower in between, is that when you are creating a great business, it takes a little bit of time. Now, it doesn't take 3 years. There are some people out there that'll tell you, well, it's going to take 3 years for a business to make a profit. That's garbage, okay? Most of my clients that follow our recipe, they are profitable within 6 months in worst case scenario. Many are profitable within the first quarter. Every practice that I've opened, that I've been involved with, has been profitable within, on an average, 4 months, okay? And the thing is that you have to be a little bit patient. Now, let's talk a little bit about patience and what that means. When you're following the recipe, just like I did, okay? When you get to that third step, all right, there are certain things that you're checking along the way while you're cooking a bolognese, same thing in your business, to make sure that everything is on track, right? If you burn the trinity, the onions, the celery, the carrots, the wee bit of garlic, before you put all the meat in, it's going to ruin everything. So being really clear on one message, one market, one offer, I cannot tell you enough how important that is, okay? And taking the time to not overcook the beef and just kind of nurture it slowly as you're cooking it to render out the fat, that's step 2. That is the educate and excite, what we call know, like, and trust. And then when you start to add everything else in, that's when we get to the really good stuff of really creating this beautiful, rich layering. Now, businesses like food take time and experience in order for you to create that multi-level of flavor, all the different levels of profit. In the beginning, you're going to be frustrated because you're only making money one way. This is how Trevor felt, right? We got Trevor to $220,000 a month making one offer to one market and one message. That was it. Afterwards, we started to add a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, a little bit of oregano to taste, in order to then add in some different flavors to make it very unique in his own. You know, I've cooked this bolognese sauce for probably better part of 5 years. And, you know, I've got it down, but I've made adjustments to the recipe after I made it a few times to make it my own. And I can promise you it always turns out great. And this is going to be amazing tomorrow. I just had Katie taste this and she said it very well might be my best ever. But, you know, the interesting thing about being a cook, cooking your own food and growing your own businesses, I'm always looking for that little bit of extra edge, that little bit of extra spice. That right there, I'm going to tell you, is some kind of good. Some pasta tonight, Katie and I, some spaghetti squash. There'll be some garlic bread and a little bit of red wine. It'll make a very wonderful meal. But it took a little bit of time, and you have to follow the recipe. If your practice is not getting you the results that you want, why don't you come take a look at our recipe? Now, I won't give you the recipe unless you're in the program. Let's be clear about this. You'll get the basics of the recipe in my book, The Anatomy of a Seven-Figure Medical Practice. But if you really want to learn how to cook it so that you have an amazing flavor, an amazing taste, your house is filled with these great aromas of this amazing bolognese, why don't you reach out to us? You can go to srpmedicalmarketing.com/fellowship. We have our Business Mastery Fellowship. It's where we teach you the fundamentals of running a business, of growing it, just like making this bolognese. Our top level group is what we call private client group. And that's where we get together a couple times a year with everybody. And we really dig into the bits and pieces of it. And maybe on one of the trips, I'll even let you try some of the bolognese. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked this episode, take a moment and share it with your fellow medical professionals, or post a positive comment and rate it on wherever you just listen. Now, don't forget, you can get a copy of my book, The Anatomy of a Seven-Figure Medical Practice, for free. Just pay $7.95 in shipping and handling. Plus, you'll get over $1,197 in free bonus material. Simply go to srpmedicalmarketing.com/book. That's srpmedicalmarketing.com/book. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.